You know, Trump was caning China on trade. He was encouraging the protesters in Hong Kong. So now they inflict us with this virus, and now they're coming to burn our cities. This is an act of war. The Chinese are behind this stuff, and it's being implemented on the ground by Maoist communists from the Communist Party USA, Freedom Road, Liberation Road, Party for Socialism and Liberation, Workers' World Party, and many others. And they're working with Black Lives Matter. They're working with some of the Muslim groups. All of them want to create chaos. Liberation Road also has extensive ties to Palestinians. They've sent several delegations to Palestine to meet with Palestinian terrorists and communists. They were the ones who basically gave us the riots in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. That's Liberation Road. And they boast in their own publications that they brought 10,000 people into that area from out of state. 10,000. So they can mobilize big numbers. Most of these people in these cities are not from the cities who are doing the rioting. The leaders are from out of state a lot of times, and they're all committing felonies to do that. They are all eligible for jail sentences if convicted right now for what they've done to date.
So you believe, Trevor, that it can easily be proven that this is Chinese communist, perhaps Russia, as well as Islamic money? In other words, the red-green axis that we've been warning about forever.
Well, look, I think most of the money comes from here, but the direction comes from these people are pro-Chinese communist parties. They get the money from Soros. They get the money from the Democracy Alliance. They get it from the unions. They don't need Chinese money. They've got plenty of American money. What they need is the green light to do this stuff. These people would not do this stuff unless they were given the okay to do it.
Why?
Because, a revolutionary move at the wrong time can backfire. This is all tactics. They've had the ability to start race riots in this country for the last 25 years, all over the country, but they've only sparingly used it. So why are they doing it now? They're doing it now because it's election year and Trump might get elected, and the Russians and the Chinese don't want that. These people are slaves to China. They don't do stuff unless they get the okay. It's like, a mafia soldier doesn't go out and do something without the capo saying so. There's a chain of command here. These are not crazy anarchists. These are organized, disciplined communists who work for China and Russia and Iran. They follow instructions. They're not going to risk a major blowback and if it wasn't the right time, if they didn't get instructions to do this, they would not do this.
And one reason we know this to be true, Trevor, is you have talked to people that have gone over to some of these countries and been trained and then came back to your country, even though you're in Florida now. You're from, obviously, New Zealand, but you know people that have gone through this training. And tell me what countries they went through the training in.
Well, look, I talked to a lot of people, and I talked to people in the 80s who'd been trained in the Soviet Union. And they had 6,000 people at this training school in Moscow, and they were taught racial agitation. They were taught to denigrate the police. They were taught all sorts of stuff on some of them were on 7-year courses. They were taught explosives. They were taught bomb making. They were taught all of this stuff. And this is an ongoing thing. It didn't die with the Soviet Union. You've still got Russia was still backing the Black Lives Matter movement just a couple of years ago. Black Lives Matter activists were going to Russia for hosting for events with the anti-globalization movement of Russia, a Putin-funded organization. This is a long-term subversive strategy. And it's scientific for them. They know exactly how to start a race riot. They've been doing this for 100 years now. They're professionals at it. And now they've decided to flick the switch. It was this guy in Minnesota was the trigger, but before that they were trying to make the guy in Atlanta the trigger. It's just a matter of time. You know that in a course of a year, 7 or 8 black people are going to get killed by the police. Hundreds of white people probably get killed by the police too, but you know that 7 or 8 or 10 black people, and you know that you can pick one of these to start a riot, to start an incident. So they're just waiting. They're just waiting. When's it going to happen? Is it going to be in Atlanta? They tried to push the Atlanta thing, but that was so obviously false. This one in Minnesota was perfect because you had film, you had clearly a white guy kneeling on a guy's neck for a long period of time. And so it was foolproof. Start a riot, you get a lot of sympathy because it was obviously an egregious action. But I guarantee you, and people have said this, most of these kids probably don't even know the name of the guy who got killed. It's just the communists are stirring them up, and they've got rebellion in their hearts, and they're looting and setting fire to things. It's the most fun they've ever had in their lives. And these communists are sitting there giving them money, giving them weapons, egging them on, and then retreating in the background while these kids get arrested. Most of the people arrested will not be the perpetrators. They will be just idiots who just get pushed into things.
My guest is Trevor Loudon. By the way, Trevor, we got a lot of background noise. If you could help me with that, as well as your camera shaking. But my guest is Trevor.
Just because I get excited.
I hear that. Trevor, you're passionate, and we need more of that. Trevor Loudon, author of White House Reds, Communist, Socialist, and Security Risk, running for U.S. President 2020. Trevor Loudon. You can get a copy at trevorloudon.com. By the way, folks, in 2019, December 2019, this came out, Siege. 8.5 hours, Siege. What was it subtitled? The Clear and Present Dangers Pushing America to the Brink of a Marxist Islamic Revolution. Timing couldn't have been more perfect, right? If you really want to understand, what have we heard tonight? That this is a red-green axis strategy. What have we already had? Our documentary, I don't have here, Sabotage. We showed you the video of the Muslim Brotherhood leader saying what? Black Lives Matter is now our matter. Black Lives Matter is our campaign. This is a red-green axis. This is why we call it a Marxist Islamic revolution. And yet, how many Americans understand this? How many? Not enough. And then it said Civil War. So the title was The Clear Present Dangers Pushing America to the Brink of a Marxist Islamic Revolution, Civil War, World War III, and Globalism. We got a civil war going on now, folks. We explain with our experts how the civil war is already going on. But what do you call it when Americans are fighting Americans? Americans are fighting our own National Guard. Americans are fighting Secret Service. By the way, I have never seen the Secret Service be so patient and show so much restraint as they did the other night. But as I watched that live, I was watching Americans fight Americans. Over what? Not over Mr. Floyd, because the Secret Service didn't have anything to do with that. They're fighting Trump because they see Trump as a symbol of the values many of you and I hold to related to national security, the free market system, opposed to globalism, opposed to the destruction of America's businesses through a progressive income tax system that destroys business. The Federal Reserve and the bankers that enrich themselves and inflate our currency and steal the majority of the people's wealth, and not one man in a million will know what's going on, as Alfred Kinsey of Keynesian Economics boasted. This is an ideological civil war, and it's already started. Now it's spilled into the streets, but it's not like we haven't been producing books and documentaries to warn you about it. But you know what's really sad? What's really sad is most Christians don't even get this stuff. You know why? Because most of their pastors are the product of government schools and mamsy-pansy seminaries, and we got a bunch of pansies in the pulpit for pastors in America today. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them. And they don't want to talk about any of these issues because they got city council members and the mayor and the superintendent of the public schools and all these people, political activists going to their hip church, their mega church, hip church. And then you've got people like, well, Matt Chandler and David Platt, some of the other leading guys that are heroes to many of our so-called pastors in America today, pushing the Marxist agenda of white privilege. So sadly, it's not the Christians largely that are going to stop this. It's going to be a lot of just flat out conservative constitutionalists. Now, I don't know if you guys are building a house over there in Florida, but we're getting a lot of background noise. But Trevor, talk to me about the mayor of Minneapolis. Tell me about, this guy's an attorney and he is a community organizer. He's a white Barack Obama. Tell me about him.
Well, look, that's exactly what he is. He came to the city from Virginia. He's heavily involved in community organizing, which is what we used to call communist agitation. And he is just pushing the same old line. Look, this is bad. This is the fault of 400 years of racism. No, it's not. It's the fault of 60 years of Marxist agitation and poor education and slack policing. That's what it's the result of. So, but this is endemic in Minnesota. You know, you've got the governor, Tim Walz, who trained at the Marxist Wellstone School. You've got the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, an Antifa supporter, who has been to Saudi Arabia, is connected to Iran, connected to the Communist Party and Freedom Road Socialist Organization and Democratic Socialists of America. He held fundraisers in the home of the Minnesota Communist Party leader. So this is the culture you have in Minnesota, which is why it is this kind of thing is so effective up there, because they know they can get away with it and they will not be chastised. You know, the mayor says, you know, Keith Ellison says, we've heard your message loud and clear. Well, if your son sets fire to his room and beats up his sister, you don't say, look, I've heard your message loud and clear and I understand you have some grievances and we better address them. No, you dish out some very, very, very severe punishment to make sure this never, ever happens again. That's the Christian thing to do for everybody concerned. So when you've got the leaders of a state doing nothing and blaming the victims of this criminal activity, you can see that the leadership is criminal. These people are communists and socialists. They are political criminals running a state and allowing their brethren on the streets to destroy people's businesses, livelihoods, and kill people. And the middle class, nice Minnesotans are wondering what the heck is going on here. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee 45% of them will still go down and vote Democrat in the next election. They make no connection to the political choices they make and the outcomes they get. They really don't get it. And thankfully, I think after this, enough of them might to make the next election in Minnesota a lot more conservative.
What we're talking about here is something we've been warning about a long time: pressure from above, pressure from below. And you just described it. You get community organizers into office. The mayor of Minneapolis, Frey, a community organizer and attorney, not even from Minnesota, came there, I think, in 2009. I lived up there for many years, born in Jackson, Mississippi, lived there a few years as a child, then to Washington, D.C. for 8 years, then to Minneapolis, St. Paul for way too long. I know the area is being burned. I've been all over those towns for many, many years. I know Minneapolis, St. Paul very, very well. When I see them shutting down the interstates, I know exactly what interstates they're shutting down. I lived up there, met my wife up there, who's from Illinois but was going to school there. 16 years ago, I saw the handwriting on the wall, came back down here to the Mid-South where I'm from. Grandparents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-great-grandparents, all raised about 40 miles northeast of here. But I got out of there. It ain't perfect here, but it's a lot better than up there, because I saw the handwriting on the wall with the little Somalia of St. Paul and them taking over and who they're electing and putting into office and how people largely don't think but just vote, as he just said, blindly. And so here's that pressure from above and pressure from below. And that's what he was just describing. This is a Marxist tactic. So now we have the middle class in the middle. You just heard what he said, and we played the clips on our radio show on Friday at worldviewradio.com, the audio clips. Keith Ellison, your message has been heard loud and clear. The governor of Minnesota. Oh, this is decades of systemic racism and inequality. Making excuses for it. Your message has been heard loud and clear. So now, what is the message to the street people? You're really justified in what you're doing. Keep it up. Wink, wink. I think that's what they're saying. But then they say, oh, well, we don't like this. We condemn this. Really? Yet they're calling people into the state at one point. And then the middle class is going, I just want Minnesota nice. I want to go back to Minnesota nice. And yet here's the politicians saying, we've heard you. We're going to address these issues. We're bringing change. You know what the buzzword change is? Saul Alinsky used that word a lot. You know what he said? The change comes from the conflict. The change comes from the conflict. By change, he meant revolution. And so when these politicians say, we've heard you loud and clear, and we're going to work to keep bringing you the change, that's only encouraging this. And who is caught in the middle between the politician, community organizers at the top, the street level community organizers, rioters, thugs at the street level? So from the top to the bottom. And who's caught in the middle? The middle class. And what do the politicians turn and say to them? Well, if you don't want this stuff to keep happening, we've got to deal with this systemic racism, i.e. the free market system. We've got to redistribute the wealth. And you know what the middle class largely will say? I don't like it, but if that's what it takes to get back my community, I'll do it. And so the middle class, this is a shakedown. This is a manipulation. This is blackmail. This is a financial, psychological, brainwashing shakedown of the middle class by the politicians and their street-level thug rioters. And they're saying to the middle class, capitalist, free market is really the term we should use. Folks, if you don't like it, you better cough up the money, or we're going to keep burning down the city. Right or wrong, Trevor?
Absolutely right. It's a shakedown. It's what the mafia would do. It's what the Chicago mob would do. You know, Alinsky learned his tactics from the Chicago mob.
Sure he did.
You know, he had his Marxist ideology, and he learned the tactics from Frank Nitti, who ran the Chicago mob before Capone took over. So this is what's happening. You know, we had a community organizer-in-chief under Obama, and he laid the groundwork for this. A lot of the training and preparation went on. Now they've got Trump. Now they've got to get rid of him to carry the revolution on. And so this is what they're doing to do it, to destabilize the country, shake down the middle class, and cause terror in the middle class. So they'll basically say, well, look, this is bad under Trump. You know, I don't like Joe Biden, but at least he can bring peace. You know, maybe Joe Biden will bring peace because he'll say, we're going to address this. We're going to address this systemic racism. He's going to put a black woman on as his VP candidate. And look at that racist Trump. This has only happened since Trump's been in power. Yeah, because it was all getting ready under Obama. And now they're unleashing it. This was built under Obama, unleashed against Trump to make sure the next president of the United States is a Democrat, and a communist Democrat at that, which Joe Biden is, which I point out in my book, White House Reds.
There it is. White House Reds. We got the first TV interview at WVW-TV. We interviewed 4 one-hour shows. I think we've released 2 already. We got the first TV interviews of his new book, White House Reds. And in here, you know what he reveals? Joe Biden, what was he, 29 years old? And Al Gore Sr. and his wife grabbed Joe Biden running for U.S. Senate in Delaware against a very popular man with very high ratings. I think it was like 29, and convinced him to run, and it was through an organization known as Council for a Livable World. It was an anti-nuke organization. It was an organization tied back to a Hungarian socialist, if I remember correctly, Trevor, and then it was also tied to Armour Hammond of the baking soda company, who is known as a USSR frontman and agent. Do I have all that correct?
Yeah. No, the company the organization was set up by a Soviet spy, Leo Szilard. And Biden was personally recruited by the protege of another Soviet spy, Armand Hammer. So he was made in Russia, and he has worked to destroy the U.S. military every step of his career. Trump said the other day, he said if Biden is elected, he will sell this country to China, and that's absolutely correct. We are so close to the revolution now, it is unbelievable. We lose the election in November. I don't see how it's recoverable from that point.
It's all in the book, White House Reds, at trevorloudon.com, Trevor, 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 Loudon, Loudon, trevorloudon.com. By the way, if you sign up for our Situation Room at situationroom.net, or the best URL is wvwtv.com/subscription, wvwtv.com/subscription. We have like 1,600 TV shows like this. 1,600 of them. Not to count the thousands of radio shows, ebooks, audiobooks, transcripts. But if you join at wvwtv.com/subscription at the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year rate, I'll send you my book, Marxianity, 300-page book, Marxianity, and my documentary, 6 Hours Sabotage. I'll send those to you for free. If you haven't gotten yours yet, hang on. I know we sent out a lot of them a few weeks ago, and about every month, we go to work and send out the next batch. So if you join at wvwtv.com/subscription, I'll send you Marxianity and the documentary Sabotage, absolutely free. I would, however, urge you to go to siegethemovie.com and watch 1 hour for free. 8.5 hours explaining so much of what's happening and how we got here. It's shocking how much of this documentary, which came out in December 2019, was made for now. And I actually promoted it that way, that this would be the documentary that would help you understand, because Trevor and I knew this was coming. We knew. We were predicting in 18 and 19 that 2020 would be a volatile year as we move toward the election to do exactly what we've been explaining. So we knew this was coming, didn't we, Trevor?
Well, we've spoken about it many times. We're on record, but it's not that we're clairvoyant.
Right.
We just read their stuff.
That's right.
We read the enemy's literature. They boast about this stuff. They tell us what they're going to do. This should not be a mystery to Fox News and most of the Republican Party.
So
it's out there.
Why is Fox News not talking about this? Why have I not heard the word Marxism or communism on Fox News? Have you?
No, I haven't. I don't think they'll use the word. I think they're middle of the road, and they don't want to be seen as extreme. Well, sometimes you just got to tell the truth. You know, we're facing cities burning and people dying here, and 98% of the American people have no idea what was going on. Somebody on Fox News the other night was saying, well, this is because people have been locked up for so long with the COVID virus that when they get out, they just go a little bit crazy.
No.
Well, yeah, there's a little bit of that. That might be 1% of it. But 99% of it is communist agitators stirring these communities up for decades with a clear plan to bring this country to its knees through racial agitation. They've been working on stirring black hatred towards the police force since the 1950s. I've seen documents from the Denver Communist Party talking about how they're going to plan some scam where some guy allegedly gets beaten up, then they're going to march on the police station and all this kind of thing. This is old stuff. But we keep on falling for it again and again and again because our media won't expose it and our politicians won't confront it.
Well, you know, in my monologue, I gave all these quotes from the 1950s and 60s and talking about who was behind the riots in the 1960s and 66, 67. So, again, this is not new. This is exactly what Stokely Carmichael said they were going to do, fight the police and burn down the cities. This is not new. Tell me about this guy here, Mark Froman. You've called him the most influential communist in Minnesota.
Fromke, I think his name is.
Fromke, okay.
Well, look, Mark Fromke is the leader of the Minnesota Dakotas Communist Party. He's a unionist, sort of works up in the sugar mill areas in northern Minnesota and heads out to South Dakota. But look, you see pictures of him standing with Amy Klobuchar, hugging Mark Dayton, your former governor, walking along, chatting amiably with your former Senator Al Franken. This guy is heavily connected to the top leaders of the Democratic Farmer Labor Party in Minnesota. The Democratic Farmer Labor Party is the Democratic Party. It's just a local name for it. Fromke has been a Communist Party member for years. He knows all these leading DFL politicians. And I'll give you an example. In 2000, I think it was, the Communist Party USA held a farm commission meeting in, I think it was in Missouri. And Fromke was there and several others were there. And another man was there and his name was Mark Ritchie. You might have remembered him. He was your Secretary of State in Minnesota a few years ago. Well, when they needed one more Senate vote in 2008 to get Obamacare through, that was when they were having a recount between Norm Coleman and Al Franken, the Democrat. They needed that to get that Democrat vote in the Senate to get Obamacare. Mark Ritchie, the Secretary of State, who'd been at that secret Communist Party meeting, just kept on counting votes until Al Franken was elected. Okay?
They found some in a trunk. They found some in a trunk.
They found him in a trunk. And Al Franken provided the last vote they needed to get Obamacare through. So Fromke was at that meeting. Fromke is one of the leading communists in the country and has huge influence with the leadership of the Minnesota DFL.
Well, let's talk about the Minnesota DFL, because Gus Hall, who was the Communist Party leader for so many years, ran for president in the 70s, 80s, he came right out of Minnesota.
Well, that's right. See, the reason why Minnesota went left so early is because usually in most states your rural areas are conservative and it balances out the left-wing cities. But in about 1905 to 1912, they had a Bolshevik revolution in Russia which failed, and the Tsar cracked down, and thousands of communists from Finland took off to America. And where looks like Finland more than anywhere else in the United States? It's up in the Iron Range in northern Minnesota. So thousands of Finnish communists settled up there, and they turned the whole area left. They ran the area. And so Minnesota went left quick. And in the 1930s, these communists set up a Farmer Labor Party as a front. And then that Farmer Labor Party joined with the Democratic Party to form what we now call the DFL, the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. So it was always communist. Then you had the huge communist influence in Minnesota and St. Paul. You've had several Marxist mayors of both cities, actual members of Democratic Socialists of America. Donald Fraser, who was a congressman who was very heavily involved with the communists, was mayor of Minneapolis for some time. So you had this very left-wing culture, and they welcomed in the Muslims. They brought in the Somalis because they knew they were going to be very reliable left-wing voters. They decided very early on that Minnesota was going to be a communist bulwark in America. It was going to be one of the headquarters to spread the revolution. So they already had Illinois, they already got California, they've got New York, they've got Massachusetts, they've got Minnesota, they've got Michigan. This is a big, these are the areas they used to consolidate their power and win nationwide elections and spread the revolution.
And then they used those unions. They used those unions and the union money to fund the communist agenda, the Marxist agenda, socialist progressive agenda, what do you want to call it. Yeah. And it was the unions they finally flipped during the 90s and the Clinton years to stop being against strong borders and open up. They got the unions to slit their own throats, didn't they?
Well, that's right. See, the unions used to be run by anti-communists. See, America was very lucky. You're the only place in the world where the unions were not communist controlled, right up until the 90s. And they were very much against illegal immigration. They had people on the border. They were trying to get tough laws passed because they could see illegal immigrants taking their jobs, lowering wages and conditions. But in 1994, the Marxists of Democratic Socialists of America and the Communist Party USA put their man, John Sweeney, in as president. And he took out the ban on communists holding office in the AFL-CIO. The communists come flooding in. Now the AFL-CIO is completely communist controlled. Then they flipped the policy of opposing illegal immigration to promoting it. So they sold out their own members all over the country, sold out their own people because the revolution comes first. This is a communist thing, and if you control the unions, you effectively control the Democratic Party.
And you also, this is where you get your funding for it. This is where you get your funding for to fund your candidates.
You've got all these union guys chipping in $10 a month or whatever they do, and these might be veterans, they might be patriots, they might be gun owners and hunters and just good old American boys, but every month they're sending $10 to the communists. That's what they're doing, and that's millions and millions and millions of dollars. If you're a union member in America today, you are supporting communism.
We're quickly running out of time.
Whether you want to be or not.
We're quickly running out of time. Tell me quickly, why are the police in Philadelphia and these other cities allowing them to do what the police of past decades would have never let them do? Is that because, again, they're being controlled by the Marxist, socialist, progressive city council and mayors that are allowing this to empower the rioters?
Absolutely. Back in the Philadelphia riots in the 60s, you had conservative Democrats like Frank Rizzo, and he took it to the demonstrators. He absolutely nailed them. Daley in Chicago, pretty corrupt, but he stuck it to the to the demonstrators because at least they were Americans. They were patriots. They didn't like communist rioters wrecking their cities. Well, the new breed of Democrats taken over. They control the police. They say, back off. These people are our friends. They have genuine grievances. Go and chase down some Tea Party folk. Go and hassle them. So they stand by. You notice all the worst rioting is in Democrat-controlled cities. Berkeley, Boston, New York, Richmond, Virginia, Minnesota, obviously. It's all Democrat cities because the police are told by the city fathers to stand down or bring in a very weak response.
Because this is how, again, they get the pressure from above and the pressure from below. They need this to happen to convince the middle class to throw up their arms and say, okay, we'll accept your big taxation and stealing all of our money to redistribute the wealth. We just feel scared and we can't even go to the grocery store and the Apple store is closed and Target is boarded up and I can't go to church and school. And I mean, it's crazy what has happened, not to mention all the businesses. And they're burning down the businesses of black guys that have worked their whole life and saved, like this poor guy in Minneapolis, I think was a firefighter, and he saved and worked and scraped a black business owner to open his little restaurant or whatever it was, and they burned it to the ground, and the poor guy has no insurance. But hey, they don't care that he's black. The fact that he was running a business makes him an Uncle Tom, does it not?
No, they especially care that he's black because they do not want to see successful, free enterprising blacks. That's right. A bad example. These people have got to be dealt with. They're sellouts. We got to have socialist, rebellious, angry, bitter blacks. That's what we need. Who are always going to vote Democrat. That's what we want. So they're happy to burn any black business you like. Ferguson, Missouri, wiped out the black business community of that city. Did they care? No, because it's not about the race. It's about the revolution.
That's right.
That's what it's about. And if you have to sacrifice black business owners, they shouldn't have been dirty Uncle Tom sellouts in the first place. They got what they deserved.
So in the closing 2 minutes, tell me, where is this going? What do you anticipate seeing next? And what is going to happen at the DNC conference convention, the Republican convention? What do you see happening the rest of the election cycle of 2020?
Well, they're going to march on the DNC conference, but that's the Chinese Maoists are doing that because it sort of makes the Democrats look a bit respectable if you do that, if you go and trash them as well. But they will go after the Republicans. I anticipate we're going to see a whole summer of this stuff. And I suspect we're going to see bombings. I expect we're going to see some maybe assassinations. We're going to see more violence and probably more killings unless there is resolute action. In a lot of areas, this is going to have to be federal because the Democrats will not do it in their own cities. They won't do it in Portland or Oakland or Berkeley. This is going to have to be federal intervention here. And that sets the stage. All around the world, it's going to be America's invading its own cities.
In other words, in other words, the communists have put us right where they want us, getting Republicans / conservatives so scared and so upset that we actually implement the tyrannical policies necessary that that in some ways can infringe on civil liberties and rights and martial law, but it'll be justified to bring peace. And who brought it? The conservatives and the middle class who are screaming for it. So in other words, they've set us up to put us in the middle and get us to slit our own throats by setting a precedent that if anyone else did of a progressive Marxist socialist party, we would scream and holler. Am I off on this?
Yeah, no, you're right. Look, we're in trouble if we don't fight back, and we're in trouble if we do fight back. But I'll tell you what, we're going to be in less trouble if we do fight back, because otherwise they're just going to keep on burning right up till the election. And so Trump has got to come out and do a State of the Union speech and say this is foreign directed subversion in our country, and we are going to take resolute action. And the warning comes right now: you commit crimes, you go to jail. We're coming after you with the full force of the federal government. That's got to be a message that's sent out now.
I'm very worried.
That might damp it. Otherwise, it's just going to go on and on and on until we have to fight back. And it's so violent, it's going to look terrible, whatever happens.
Well, you and I knew Larry Grothwall. I interviewed him. He penetrated the Weather Underground for the police in Ohio, and then as an informant for the FBI. And I interviewed him in 2009, played audio clips the other day. He's passed away now. But he talked all about this when he was penetrated the Weather Underground, which is Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dorn. Bernardine Dorn, who worked at the same law firm, if I'm not mistaken, with Michelle Obama, and Bill Ayers, who ended up being elected to being the head of, like, second in command of one of the biggest education organizations in America and writing social justice curriculum. So they've had decades to brainwash America's kids into social justice and racism, i.e. capitalism, free market is racism. So they've been working on the inside as former Weather Underground folks involved in over 30 bombings who put Obama into office and launched his career right out of Bill Ayers and Bernadine's living room, correct?
Yeah. They were having dinners together almost every night of the week for 10 years. They wasn't Obama said he's just some guy in the neighborhood. They were intimate friends. But see, this is the point. In the 60s, you had the radicals who wanted to create a revolution, but America was still largely conservative, patriotic, and Christian. They've had 40 years since then to spread their poison right through the universities and the high schools and the colleges. Young kids are falling for this garbage. So it isn't just a few radicals now. This is a few radicals with about 40% of America behind them. That's more than enough for a revolution.
Well, and folks, again, education is the key. Education is the key. Waking up your friends, your neighbors, your pastors, associate pastors, your rhino Republicans, if you can, or booting them out and getting new ones. Siege, the movie, 8.5 hours, came out December 2019. Trevor's featured in it. The clear and present dangers pushing America to the brink of a Marxist Islamic revolution. Civil War, World War III, and globalism. I mean, can you believe 8.5 hours came out in December? We told you what was coming. And his book, White House Reds. By the way, we have set a record tonight in streaming. My wife tells me over there producing the show. White House Reds by Trevor Loudon, Communist, Socialist, and Security Risks Running for U.S. President 2020. Trevor Loudon. Trevor is spelled Trevorlound. TrevorLoudon.com to get a personally signed copy. Trevor, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I know we're going to be having to get you back regularly to help us understand what's happening and inform the people. Thank you for your service to our country. Thank you that you came here from New Zealand to help save America, because you know, as America goes, so goes New Zealand and the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure being on, and thanks for being one of the few who are willing to tell the truth, Brandon.
Well, thank you, Trevor. Folks, I hope you appreciate what we're doing here. It costs us $3,000 a month in streaming and storage. Streaming and storage, $3,000 a month. In the last 12 months, we've spent $68,000 redoing our websites, all of them. Why? Just because we want new websites? No, because the computer code was so old, we have no choice, or it won't keep working. We also had to implement more security because of the constant nonstop attacks of our websites. Some of those coming from overseas. I wonder what foreign nations those would be to bring us down. I wonder why they would want to do that. Oh, maybe because of the things we report, like tonight. So $68,000. We have a payment to make of $16,000 this week. And then we hope to launch the website by the end of this week. So folks, if you appreciate what we're doing, we need your tax-deductible support tonight. wvwfoundation.com. wvwfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to send a check. You'll find our phone number if you prefer to give by phone. You've already heard tonight, Fox News is not going to give you this history. We're one of the few outlets left to do this. Antifa shut us down in 4 out of 5 cities in 2018. We know Antifa firsthand, they know us. And now we're doing this. More streaming, more radio, 53 stations a day, live, Monday through Friday, 1 to 2 p.m. But we need your support. We are listener supported. We don't have some big organization supporting us. We have individual Americans, patriots like you. It is vital that we hear from you this week so we can make that $16,000 final payment to our computer tech and get this news site launched. Not to mention the $3,000 a month we spend in streaming and storage to give you free programs like this. www.foundation.com. www.foundation.com. We've set record streams tonight, informed a lot of people, and that happened because of you. Thank you for supporting us so that we have this platform and this ability to do this. Thank you. And thanks to my friend Trevor Loudon for being with us. Till next time, I'm Brandon House. Thanks for watching. Take care.